In the last few videos, I've made a real point of the importance of separating your self-worth from your output. I think a unfortunate trap that we can fall into when it comes to self-improvement is feeling as though our worth as a person is so directly attached to our output that if our output is not to an inhumane level of excellence, that our self-worth has no place in the conversation. It's very easy when it comes to self-improvement to feel as though you are only as valuable as your output, and I have voiced this point quite consistently recently, and as a result of that, there has been a scotoma of sorts that I have realised needs to be addressed. Hard work is incredibly useful when things are going wrong, and more specifically, it's a very useful basis to have in your life. I have noticed from my own perspective, as a result of being someone who is leaning closer in the direction of the hammock-donning hippie, that I need to put some more effort into the hard work side of things. I've done well with the podcast, but otherwise I've struggled to maintain some habits that need to be maintained. And I want to talk in today's video about how important it is that we strike a balance between knowing where hard work stands and why we should be someone who uses hard work as one of our cornerstones for our mind, but not having that have such a bearing on our train of thoughts that we can't feel valuable unless we're working. So I'm going to start today by talking about how reinstating that foundation of hard work when things are going wrong is so useful. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to go through a number of ways or a number of sort of techniques that are very useful for me, and that I know when things are going wrong for me, it's quite often that I'm not doing these things. The first one that I'm going to go into today is exercise. Now, what I mean when I say exercise is not this typical way of combating your weaknesses or just running the self-improvement gauntlet. I don't mean that you have to go to the gym for 3 hours or go for the run that you really don't want to do. And this is where I'm going to sort of try and blend these two topics together. Is I think one of the most important things to reinstate when things are not going so well for you, or to keep things from not going so well for you, is exercise. Putting yourself in a position where you're consistently amidst some form of physical endurance or some form of sport is very useful for keeping the mind fresh. I notice there's a great deal of pent-up frustration within me when things are not going well, and a useful way of exerting that without causing yourself any problems is exercise. Now, the reason as to why I wanted to combine the two topics today of detaching your self-worth from your output, but being aware of how useful your output is because I think this sort of information often comes with the price tag of you need to do something you really don't want to do. Now, there is a tremendous amount of value in doing that, but excuse me. But I think it's important that when things are not going well, we find the easiest way to do the hardest thing, because that's essentially what we're looking to do. We need to find a place where we can get the benefits of the hard stuff, but we need to find a way to do that that appeals to where we currently stand. I notice in myself that when things are going wrong, you obviously have less energy, you feel more lethargic, you don't feel as though you can fire on as many cylinders as you normally can, and as a result of that, if we're not careful, we can sort of price ourselves out of doing the things that we need to do to feel better. It's all well and good assuming or being told that, oh, you just do it, just work harder. That doesn't always work. And the reason why that doesn't always work is because if you lose sight of the value of what it is that you're doing, you're not going to do it. You simply do not care enough to do it. And that's where the problem lies, because we don't realise when we're in the midst of difficult times that something like exercise is very useful. Now, a helpful reframe for this, a helpful way of engaging this problem, is if you do something that you particularly enjoy doing, then it doesn't feel like hard work. I was speaking to a very good friend of mine yesterday about whether the actions that I said that I don't really parlay in some forms of self-discipline anymore, like the cold shower, because I don't find them hard anymore. I've done them for such a period of time that they're not difficult. And he said, is that not the whole point of doing them? That you do these hard exercises for so long that they become easy. And I think he's got a wonderful point, and the sort of reframe that I'd like to place on this is find the thing that is easy for you to do that still constitutes hard work. So, for instance, I love playing football. I'm very, very football oriented when it comes to my exercise, and I don't find it difficult. But there's a great deal of physical endurance and running and aerobic capacity that is required to do that, among strengths of many other varieties. So I am engaging in the positive acts that will make me feel better. A nice point that I had, or was told rather, is that energy breeds energy. Which in this instance of when things are not going well for you, when the chips are down, finding something that can provide you with more energy because you are exerting energy provides you with a sort of platform to make more positive changes. And I'm going to tie this in with the second point. And this is a cliche one, but it's something that I notice in myself. It's one of the things that I let fall by the wayside very consistently, and in terms of output and in terms of utility, it's certainly up there when it comes to keeping this little thing going well, and that's eating properly. I notice that when things are not going so well for me and I'm feeling sorry for myself, that my go-to resort is eating shit food. I will reliably move towards more and more processed foods for the sake of comfort and for the sake of ease. And as a result, tying back into the point we made with exercise, I feel lethargic. And because I feel lethargic, I do lethargic things. I can't be bothered to get up. I can't be bothered to go on a walk. I can't be bothered to do things. And as a result, that feeling is self-perpetuating, and I continue to feel discontent. It's very important that when you don't feel so good, that you fuel yourself well. And I know this is hard, which is why I want to make... This is essentially the reason why I'm running with this train of thought today, is I know that when you're unhappy, it's very difficult to do the things that are right for you to do. So it's important that you find the things that are easiest for you to do, that fall within the realm of positive behaviour. This calls back to the idea of, if you're someone who particularly struggles to go to the gym, but you find football easy to do, that doing that and exerting yourself in that fashion provides you with the benefits of something like the gym. It's important that we optimise our hard work to a point where we're making things as effortless as possible, whilst still touching on the positives of exertion. Bringing it back to the idea of food, this is actually, I would wage, almost simpler than exercise, because exercise is inherently difficult even when you're doing something you want to do. But there are plenty of foods that we enjoy that are very healthy and are good for us and that we are happy to eat, that will make us feel better. Don't underestimate how important it is to make sure that you're eating whole foods and fruits. Fruits is a big one for me. Don't underestimate that, because that energy provides you with more impetus to do positive things for yourself. You have to remember that it's energy that is often drained when you're not feeling so good. So you need to find the best ways of providing yourself with that boost of energy that can put yourself in a position where, back in line with this sort of energy provides energy thought, you provide yourself with that feeling. And as a result of feeling more energized, you can then do things that are better for you. And then, as a result, you can start working your way out of the negative trains of thought that you find yourself in. And the one that I'd like to move on to when it comes to these negative trains of thought is porn. Now, porn, we've heard plenty about how bad this shit is. And I'm totally in line with that train of thought, but I'm going to provide a bit of a spin on it. So just bear with me for a minute. Porn is one of the things that I find very consistently I will move towards using in an attempt to satiate a desire or to alleviate a boredom. And this is the problem that can come with this sort of behaviour, is we do it at exactly the time, not when it's our sort of evolutionary necessity, but we're just bored. And that's the cutting edge. That's the difference here, is how do I say this in like the way that a mum would say it to their child? I'm not sure. You know the topic that I'm talking about. If you're jerking the proverbial chicken, you can, there is an evolutionary place for that. If you're a young person, there's an importance to doing that at certain points in time if you're not sexually active. But if you're doing things, if you're doing that for the sake of alleviating boredom, you're going to instill yourself with some very negative trains of thought. Your mind will be oriented in a way that you don't want it to be oriented in, and as a result of doing that, you won't be in touch with the fact that the thought in question is not one that you want, because your mind is focused in that direction, and it assumes that, well, this is the feeling that I'm looking for, and this is how I get it, so this is the right thing to do, so let me do that. It's very important that we realise when things are not going well for us, that boredom has quite a strong bearing on that landscape. A lot of the time, a negative situation is highlighted by boredom. We just don't really know what to do, and as a result of that, we parlay in behaviours that provide us with some form of feeling because we just want to feel something because we're bored. Boredom, there was a quote that I really enjoyed on the point of boredom, of most people's lives are dictated by what they do when they are bored, and this is a fantastic quote because it's totally correct. You will notice in yourself that when you're bored, you're likely to feel negative, and within that feeling you shall resort to behaviours that provide you with some feeling of alleviating or some feeling of just stimulation, and these behaviours will almost inherently be negative ones because you're reaching for the cookie jar, you're reaching for the thing that is closest to you and that is easiest for you to come to terms with, because you want a quick fix. You don't want to be sitting on, you don't want to put 2 hours of work into something and then feel good. You just want to feel good now because you're bored. Very important that we avoid porn when it comes to things like boredom when you're in a negative state. And to be honest, when it comes to negative states, porn is one that you should just keep away from you inherently. So yeah, I think, so just as a little touch up on where we're at the moment, make sure you're eating well, make sure you're going and doing some form of exercise that is helpful but fun for you. Choose something that's fun for you to do in exercise, and eat the healthy foods that are nicest for you. Don't be eating things or doing things just for the sake of this is healthy or this is difficult. Know why you're doing it, because then you can tell yourself when you're not so sure why you're doing this thing, why you're doing it. It's very difficult for us to stay in touch with positive behaviours when we don't actually know why we're doing them, and that's quite a consistent theme of self-improvement, is we will choose to do things essentially because we're aware of the fact that it's hard or it's good for us, but we don't really get why, because it's not personal. You can say that it's very difficult to chew glass, but I don't think there's much benefit in chewing glass, so don't do it. And it's the same point on strenuous behaviours, is when we're working hard, we need to parlay in these behaviours so that we can feel the benefits of them. But if we don't understand why we're doing them, then we're not going to feel those benefits, which calls back to this idea of making sure that you find the most seamless, least friction-based way of being involved in behaviours that are progressive for you. So, another thing that I would like to talk about is making sure that you don't speak out of turn when you're annoyed. It's very easy when you're frustrated or upset or just generally discontent with the way things are going to resort to saying what's on your mind without any precursive thought. It's very easy to do that, and it's something that I catch myself on a consistent basis of. My emotions are quite evidently at the forefront of what it is that I'm thinking about, and as a result of that, I will be more likely to entertain trains of thought that might be malignant in terms of how I am presenting myself to the world. I don't want to say the first thing that comes to my head on a very consistent basis, because your mind is it's an inherent storm. It just throws ideas out, and you have to control the funnel. You have to control what comes out, and it's easy for that funnel to slip, or that filter to slip, when we're not feeling so good, because we're just irritated and we don't feel like putting energy in. And that's essentially what the point of, when you say something you didn't mean, you basically didn't put enough energy into thinking, I probably shouldn't say that, let me think about it before I do it. It's the lack of energy, and it calls back to this idea of, if you're exercising and you're doing things that are good for you, that provides you with some energy, as the compounding effect takes place in the form of making sure your diet is well on this. You provide yourself with more energy to make sure that you're not making poor decisions. Poor decisions are a direct byproduct of fatigue, in my opinion. I think a lot of the time our behaviours that we wish we didn't do are a direct byproduct of feeling tired or bored. But boredom sort of ties itself in with this, where you just think, oh, I can't really be asked to do anything, but I want to feel good. I want to feel something, so let me do something that's stimulating. And then you reach for the black and orange site. So it's important for us to realise that when we are not feeling so good within ourselves, we become impulsive and we lack thought. And that lack of thought is embedded in not providing yourself with enough energy or time to think about what it is that you're saying. I think it's very important that we make a point of that, because the aforementioned topics have been sort of well versed. Maybe I'd like to think that I provided a bit more of like a helpful perspective on them today, but they're things that we understand. Making sure that you speak before you think before you speak, rather, is very important, because herein lies a lot of problems that we are ways of being promulgate for us. We create problems for ourselves because we don't think before we act or think before we speak. And this, as I say, to not sound like too much of a broken record, but just to make the point, in your head, when we're tired and when we don't have energy, that's when we're most likely to do these behaviours that cause us more problems. So give yourself some energy. And a bonus tip that I shall provide for today's video is to go outside. It's very important for us to remember that we are animals. We are a mammal, and we are as much a creature as any of the ones that you see flying in the trees or perusing the fields. It is very important that we know that we come from a place where nature is our innate habitat. We are supposed to be outside, and a lot of the time, if you look at your bouts of negative feeling, they are embedded in an absence of being where you really should be, and that place is outside. When you go for a walk, or you sit outside, or you read a book whilst you're sitting in the sun, something like that, you're going to feel a lot better. And that's because you're supposed to be outside. And this is not a hard thing. Fortunately, if you're someone who lives in England, we're coming into the best time of year for going and just sitting outside. If you're not living in England, well done, but you're probably somewhere that's more sunny, so you've got a benefit here anyway. You can do this more often. Find a book or an audio book, or you don't even need stimulation. You can just sit outside, but I find it's particularly useful for me if I quite enjoy sitting with an audio book and just watching the birds and seeing what's going on, and that's very useful. And I notice in myself that an inherent feeling of peace is provided to me when I do that sort of behaviour. So make sure that you spend some time outside. And I'd like to tie in just to shout from the rooftops about a certain Sam Harris. If you haven't seen Sam Harris, go and watch him. He's wonderful. He's fucking amazing. Go and watch Sam Harris. If any of what you have heard today has spoken to you, but you don't know necessarily how, for instance, on the last point, how do I make sure that I speak out, make sure I think before I speak out, a wonderful tip and a wonderful way of ingraining this behaviour within yourself is meditation. Meditation has been invaluable for me when it comes to being aware of the fact that I have a brief period of time before I say anything where I can choose whether I'm going to say that thing, or a brief period of time where I can act or I can not act, and there's an importance in my decision there. Meditation provides you with an understanding of the fact that you don't have to necessarily live by the pace of life, that you can set that pace yourself a lot of the time. When we understand that, we can go quite some distance to alleviating some pains because we feel more in control. And that's a big part of when you feel negative, is you feel out of control. Meditation is very useful for that. And if this is something you're interested in, and I strongly urge, if you've tried meditating and it hasn't quite worked for you, or you haven't tried it at all, just hold this space with me and see whether this is something that is useful for you. Sam Harris has an app called Waking Up. You can get it for free. It's, if you type in Sam Harris or Waking Up free scholarship, you can get a free scholarship that will give you 6 months of the site for free, no questions asked. You can get it, no problem. You can get it. And not only is the meditation on there very useful, but there are some lessons and some quotes and some podcasts and stuff on there that are great in terms of mindfulness and just generally improving your mental sphere and your mental space. This is a great app to have, and it won't cost you a penny unless you want it to. If you can pay for it, do, because it's nice, because it's Sam's philanthropy is the reason why this is free. But if you can afford to, go for it. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I hope there's been something in here that can provide you with some value. And if not, then please in the comments let me know where I could potentially have sharpened up some points here or elaborated a bit better on what it is that I'm talking about. With that being said, I would like to make it evident that I will always be myself on this camera. And at the moment, I'm not navigating the best mental space. I'm noticing that essentially what it is that I'm talking about in today's video, these habits are slipping by the wayside, and I know that as I gradually reinstate these habits, that this is where things get better. It's always been the case. I'll go through these bouts and I'll come out the other side as a result of reinstating what it is that I've spoken about today. I haven't just read this off of a check sheet from somewhere online. This is things that I've really thought about myself and that have really helped me. Take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, and sometimes realise that kindness comes in the form of some tough love. With that being said, if you ever need some space to just decompress and think about some shit, this is where you find it. See you in a bit.